Jon Toogood, great to catch up with you again here at Noise11.com. And gee, it's a bit sad this occasion, John. I hope it isn't the last time we talk, but it's definitely the last time we talk about Shihad.
Is it sad? I mean, it's not, we're not really feeling that. Maybe we'll feel it on that last show, but it is something we were talking about for, a good couple of years. I mean, Shihad was always about, doing things at 100%, whether it's making records and then subsequently touring for it. And then COVID came along and it made us reassess a lot of those things. Personally, like for me, it was like for the first time I had to get off the fucking rat race for a little bit. And all of a sudden I saw my two kids in front of me and went, oh, I'm always working to make sure there's a roof over their head and I'm totally missing them, like I'm missing them growing up. And I just went, well, I just don't want to be, I've spent my whole life traveling, and I don't, I mean, personally, if I never saw the inside of a fucking airport again, I'd be stoked, but, I still love performing. I still love destinations. Like I love the places we go to. I just don't want to be away from my family. I don't want to miss it. I missed it the first time around in my first marriage. And, because I was so young and driven, I didn't really realize the effect that had on my stepdaughter, and and this time around it's like I want to be there for my kids, and but at the same time you're making a record the last two Shihad records pretty solid, Five Eyes, pretty grunty record, and then Old Gods, I think are one of our best, and those records deserve to be toured. They deserve to be toured, and they deserve to be toured for, 18 months out of a, couple of years. Unfortunately, I don't want to be away from home that long. And therefore, rather than half-assing it, we sort of came to the conclusion that it'd be better to go out on a high or with a bang rather than peter out into weekend warrior land,
Well, like you're looking at 40 years in the past when you and Tom Larkin first formed the band. How soon after did the other guys come along?
Phil came pretty early on. It wasn't, there wasn't much of a gap between Tom giving me a copy of Ride the Lightning and AC/DC's Highway to Hell and saying, learn that and let's join a band. To when we were looking for a lead guitar player, and we went into the local music store, and on the sort of notice board there was it's a really badly handwritten note saying lead guitarist looking for a metal band, single guitars preferably. and someone had written underneath it, what's wrong with married guitars, which I always thought was funny. But it was Phil, and we called him from Tom's parents' house, and he was like, whoa. And we were like, man, we love Metallica and Slayer. And he goes, oh, I sort of like them, but I'm more into Yngwie Malmsteen and Racer X and shit. And we were like, and he was like, okay, so there's another guitar player. Okay, can you get him to play over the phone? And I was like, well, all we've got is like an acoustic guitar with two strings. And he was like, I don't care. I've got to hear if you can play guitar. So I had to play like, I think Seek and Destroy or Master of Puppets by Metallica over the phone on a two-stringed acoustic guitar, and he was like, yeah, he's good enough. And so that was how we met Phil. And then Carl came in just before we started writing for the first album, what became the first album, Churn. So we made an EP called Devolve, which is very speed metal, but that was with a bass player called Hamish Lang, who was just the older brother of a school friend. He's a lovely guy, but he had a bass, and that was it. And that was the prerequisite. You own a bass, so you can be the bass player, and you're like metal. In the end, once we started sort of branching out from metal and started listening to Ministry and Nine Inch Nails and Jane's Addiction and Nirvana and Fugazi and Sonic Youth and all that sort of stuff, he was like, oh, fuck that. I'm into Alana Miles, to tell you the truth. So I'm out. So I was like, okay, that's cool. And there's no animosity. And then we needed to find someone. So we found this dude that used to come along, Carl Kippenberger, used to be in the front row at our shows at Rockies in Wellington. And he fucking loved our band. And he happened to be an amazing bass player. And that was it. So this has been the same lineup from album one to now. That's 36 years. So pretty solid lineup, you know.
Sure. So how did the conversation start about ending the band?
Well, it was sort of around that time of like Old Gods came out. We're supposed to tour it like every other band, postponed due to lockdowns. Okay, now it's rescheduled. Okay, we're going to be there. Lockdowns come in, postponed to another time, cancelled, and then redid, and then we did it. And by that time, it was like, well, it was already, I think it was almost 6 months after the album came out or something like that. And it was just that I think, during that time as well, I lost my mum. I was in lockdown in Melbourne and she was in lockdown in Wellington. She died. I couldn't be there for that. There was a lot of personal upheaval. And I think it made, not only me, but, all the guys reassess, work-life balance. I think everybody did. Everyone on the planet did. And what should be priority in people's lives. And we started talking around that time. And the talks went on for a good year and a half, So and they weren't always serene. They were always done with understanding and patience. But yeah, I think as a collective, we came to a decision that it would be better to, rather than to half-ass it and make a record that's brutal and then not, commit to touring it like it deserves to be toured due to personal circumstance. It'd be better to just go out with a bang.
I love the way you've curated the shows where you start from now and go back to then. A couple of shows are complete album shows, the General Electric and the Pacifier album, are popping up occasionally as full album shows. But as a general rule, if people go to Farewell, Shihad, you're getting the now of Old Gods and going right back to it started in reverse order.
Well, it's challenging because your physicality changes. I'm 53 now. Some of those songs I wrote when I was 21, and Tuna's a very, very physical record. Killjoy also, and then there's other moments during our career where I've decided to sing as high as I possibly can, and some of those songs are the biggest songs, and we have to play them, and it's like, shit, man. Even though I gave up smoking, 10 years ago, it's still hard to hit those notes, some of those notes, but I'm doing okay. I'm actually quite pleased with how it's going, but we're actually just really enjoying it, and it's a real nice mental challenge to play some of that older stuff for me. It's like you have to be really present to pull it off. You can't be worrying about fucking the future or the past. You have to be right in the moment, which is what attracted me to music in the first place, sensitive young dude. And I found that music was a way of escaping, worries or blah, 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 like a lot of people, So it's still doing that for me, and especially in this format, it's like, shit, we have to present music that we wrote 36 years ago sometimes, or 20 years ago, and put myself back there, what I was thinking, what am I singing about? And it still resonates with me, which is good, because then that means it will resonate with the crowd as well, which is really choice. And I think, a lot of people have sort of said to us, oh man, it must be really emotional. And it's like, yeah, it is emotional, but it's more, for me, it's business as usual in the fact that we just, every time we walk on stage, from when we were wee nippers and got to support AC/DC at Athletic Park and realized, fuck, we thought we were a good tight band. And then we watched AC/DC work for 2.5 hours, 3 hours on stage and went, we aren't even putting in 30% of what you need to put in, you know? And so we went on that journey to find out what it took to be one of those live bands that boom, you know, that explode, that it's super tight, that know how to rock a crowd, that know how to get that crowd bounce thing happening. And that journey, even though it's coming to an end, we're still on that journey. So it's like after every one of these shows, it's like boom, straight away backstage. Okay, cool. That transition into that song, that's not working. Okay, we got to rethink that. You know, dude, you got to play that tighter. Okay, I've got to make sure that I take a breath at this point. We talk. We are such nerds about it. It's like we take it very seriously. So therefore, there's no space to get sentimental about it. It's like we're enjoying it, actually, to tell you the truth. We're enjoying that. Can we still do this? And we've never done a 2 hour plus set in our lives. Yet we're doing it when we're older than we ever have been, which is really interesting to me, you know, like, and we're doing it and we're doing it well. And so I'm really enjoying that, you know, and I think that brings the camaraderie personally. It makes it much better as well because everyone knows they're there and they're working, giving their 100%, you know. So it's been a really good vibe so far.
The band, when they formed, I love the fact that you've told me about Tom telling you to go and learn the AC/DC album to form this band. 1991, you know, in one of your very first shows, you're supporting AC/DC. How starstruck were you on that tour?
I think I was just really nervous. I mean, they actually, you know what? They were AC/DC. One thing I've learned as we've gone along, we've supported a lot of international acts. The international acts that are the biggest tend to be the best ones to work with because they're not worried about you upstaging them because they're AC/DC. So it was the same for Black Sabbath. It's been the same for a few bands. The bigger bands, like Metallica, was the same. Then they're the ones that go, use all the stage, you can have whatever you want, just go gangbusters, right? But it's the bands on the way up or down in between who are really insecure. They're the dangerous ones that you have to support. So AC/DC was an absolutely it was a massively formative show to play. It was Razor's Edge tour. They were as big as they'd ever been. They had 3 banger hits on that record, and it was a full arena. And I remember doing sound check, and after getting over the fact that they had, you know, monitors in the under the floor under your feet, so wherever you walk, you could hear your guitar or the kick drum. I was just like, "Wow, this is heaven," you know. And then that we finished our sound check, and the Malcolm Young's guitar tech said, "Boys, you want to come over and have a listen to a real guitar sound?" And he basically plugged in his Gretsch and just fucking boom through this huge stack of Marshalls while we're on stage, and we went, "Oh, well, that sounds like the voice of God," you know. Like, I mean, that's literally the best sounding guitar I've ever heard, and it was also the cleanest rock guitar sound I'd ever heard. I always was under, like many young metal dudes, we were under the impression that you have to turn your gain up and, you know, but the only thing is you basically turning, everybody sounds like they've got a thunder when their gain's up. But to sound really gigantic, you have to turn your gain down and learn how to play your fucking guitar properly. And that was one of the big lessons I took from that as a guitar player. It was like, oh, okay, you've actually got to turn up the main volume, but turn the pre-gain down and then learn how to fucking play. And so that was really formative for me. And then watching from the lighting tower later on that night and watching them, and then they opened with Thunderstruck, and fuck, there was a thunderstorm and it rained, and Angus Young came out and did the Homer Simpson sort of like running around on the floor right in front of me on this rising platform. And I was just like, that dude's, you know, he was probably late 50s at the time. And I was like, you know, just going, shit, I've got to work so much harder as a front person. I thought I was giving it stick, but I'm not giving it stick compared to that guy, you know. And it was a really important show for us. It really set us on the path to going on that journey to find out what does it take to be a great live band, you know, like And then we were lucky enough to, after that, to see Fugazi live at the Vic Uni Hall, and then support Midnight Oil in Australia on their Greatest Hits tour. And, every night I'd watch Peter Garrett and just go, right, okay, he's fucking channeling, I mean, he's got a height advantage over me, but he's also a fantastic, he's got that passion, and it's, so we're very fortunate with the bands that we played with. We did a massive tour, through Europe with Faith No More. Again, Mike Patton's a great front man. Learned a lot from watching him every night. So we were very fortunate early on to play with bands that were great live bands,
But you also did AC/DC later on, the Black Ice tour. So how did they compare with Razor's Edge to Black Ice as bookends for you?
Black Ice, is that the one with Rock and Roll Train on it?
Yeah.
Which is a great song. They were fantastic. I think that was still Malcolm. That was Malcolm's last tour.
That was Malcolm's last tour, yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't notice any degradation in his playing, but apparently he was suffering from dementia there, but I didn't see it. Listen. I mean, Malcolm Young's guitar playing that's the benchmark for me as a rhythm guitar player. It's like he's part of the rhythm section, and I've always tried to do that. Like obviously there's drums and bass, but I always try to be the top end of that bass. And be on the kick drum, boom, like Malcolm Young is. So, I mean, they were just as good, I thought, even though they were a lot older, they were just as good, so they hadn't lost anything for me.
So when you're doing the shows, there's the General Electric being played at certain shows. Pacifier, when you were Pacifier for that time, hey, what about this one?
The live album, yeah, it's great. I really love that record. Yeah, great.
It was one of the rare vinyl that came out at the time too, because everything was CD at that point.
And I think it stands up, that record. It's I mean, one of the first albums I ever bought was Kiss Alive 1, so which was basically like a greatest hits live. And I think that's sort of that Pacifier live records, our attempt at doing something similar.
Yeah, the difference between Kiss Alive's the Kiss Alive album and your live album is that your live album was actually a live album.
Yeah. Oh, right. Theirs wasn't?
Kiss Alive was done in the studio.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Oh, that's just...
I hate to tell you this. I hate to tell you this. I did an interview with Peter Frampton once. I asked Peter, there's debate whether Frampton Comes Alive or Kiss Alive is the biggest selling album of all time. Which is it? And he says, I don't care because I'm the guitarist on Kiss Alive as well.
That's so great.
Yeah.
Ace was probably too stoned.
And they did the same thing when they did that one in Melbourne. Remember the Symphony Orchestra show that they did in Melbourne? I think it would have been Kiss Alive 4, the Rock Symphony, where they played in Melbourne, recorded the thing with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and then Paul and Gene just went over to Richmond and sat in the studio for a couple of weeks and basically did it again.
Oh wow, that's crazy! I'm disappointed. Kiss Alive 1 was a big record for me, man. That was a big record for me, and then Kiss Alive 2. Just because the artwork's so good.
Yeah.
Love the artwork.
So why have you chosen the Pacifier album to do in full?
Because it's one of the biggest selling records. That's literally why. And because although it's encapsulating quite a crazy part of our history, it still has some of those anthems that we still play to this day. It's like Run, Comfort Me, Semi-Normal, Bulletproof. They're good tunes, they're actually, and actually everything's been a real surprise for me on this tour. I didn't really listen to that song that much after we made that record, but we've been playing it live and it's a fucking monster. And it's like, oh, right. So there's this, I think there's just been enough time between that record coming out and enough space for me to go, okay, I'll now look at it. I can look at it again without having to be too triggered by all the stories based, around it. And take it for what it is, which is actually quite a solid pop rock record. So, and again, like I say, it's one of our biggest selling records. So yeah, that's basically why we're going to do it. And we thought it'd be a good challenge, like because we've never played some of those songs live, you know.
So will this be the end, or will you still get together and do the occasional show?
I'm not thinking that far ahead. I think everyone needs space away from this band and just to appreciate what it is, like to actually get some perspective on it. Because we've been inside this beast for like 36 years, and sometimes you just lose perspective. And I think you take things for granted. You take people for granted, So I think for now it is, yeah. It's a good break,
I think if you can base your favourite live album on Kiss Alive, you can also base your breakup on Kiss breakups and forever have comebacks.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, I've seen a few of their farewell tours. I took my now wife to one. She's 16 years older than me. She turned to me halfway through and went, "You like this?"
How many children are in the band now between the members?
Between members, 1, 2, 1, 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9.
Nine children. Have we hit grandparent status in any of the members
no,
yet?
Not quite yet. Yeah, not quite yet. Yeah. Yeah.
That will be the next challenge.
Totally. Well, if we're lucky enough to still be here to see it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure between Australia and New Zealand, we can cut ourselves off from the rest of the world.
True. Well, let's hope so.
Yeah. Yeah. Once we change the name of the Pacific Ocean to the New Zealand Ocean, we'll be right.
Yeah, totally.
Seeing as you can change any name to anything these days.
Yeah, just change, night to day at the moment.
Yeah. Well, after all, you changed from Shihad to Pacifier and back again.
And back again.
Yeah.
And back again.
So you can't complain about name changes.
No, I can't.
Jon, great to catch up at Noise 11, and it's been a pleasure to talk to you over all these decades and all these albums, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of solo albums to talk about in the future.
Awesome to talk to you, Paul.